Let me start by very succinctly summarizing the August 18th school board meeting, which, if you did not watch it, concluded at 1:30 this morning. So therefore, you might see George and I, we're fading fast. It's getting late for us right now, but we are going to be here to hopefully really talk about all kinds of different things that a lot of our parents have been asking about. But more importantly, we do have a slide that is going to address some of the things that occurred last evening. As any of you that happened to watch it or read the paper this morning, last evening it was determined that all of our students would stay virtual until October 9th, with the board reassessing data on September 22nd to possibly look at what might change at that point. And we are really going to discuss it a little bit later in our PowerPoint, what this virtual start for special education students will look like within our PowerPoint. So let's just get started. And it's a slide that comes in later. And I think it's one that a lot of people are going to be wanting to see. Thanks, George.
Sure. So I will begin. Again, the PowerPoint we're going to go through first, and I will address questions at the end. So there's a lot of information we want to get to all of you. Whoops. All right. So first of all, if you've seen the last couple board meetings, Jenny and I were on there and spoke briefly about levels of support for all students, but specific to our special education students, additional supports that we've been putting in place actually pre-COVID, but then some of them changed after COVID hit. For everyone's information, just to point out a few quick items on this PowerPoint, the parent information resources that we are continuing to share with you are also posted on the website. So in the spring, we have a page, a Radnor Township School District page on our website that has all the parent resources listed. They're broken up by category, and we would really encourage you to click on that on the website and click on that link so that you're able to see all those resources available to you. Some of the information is related to district resources, but a lot more information is related to outside supports and services. We've worked with a lot of our staff, our clinical support staff, emotional support teachers, counselors, social workers, and our Caring Foundation liaison. We have been working with them since the spring to gather resources and share them with you as they come available to us. And it talks a lot about telehealth and teleservices that are available to you. So again, we encourage you to go on there, and we will continue to update it as more information is shared. The last thing I'll point out on this page, we do have last year a new service provided in district, our clinical support counselors, and they will continue to offer support for all of our students, and they have already started virtual in the spring and will continue. If you're electing your child to be virtual, or we're forced to all be virtual, they'll continue to provide those services for your students. Same with Caring Foundation. Nadine Carroll's been with us for many years. She's our staff liaison. That process was also moved to a virtual process to limit, again, the in and out of additional staff in our buildings. And that will remain virtual for now in terms of that parent piece. Caring Foundation is also ready, if we need it, to provide additional support for our staff and parents. And on the second slide, again, just continue with some levels of support. We did this year bring in a new process called CSTAG. It is our risk and threat assessment processes, and we work with DCIU on that. We moved those processes to a virtual platform as well, and that will continue. Paraprofessional training, paraprofessionals are crucial members of the team, and we did provide them additional training in the spring related to some areas you see there. I apologize. Mental health, warning signs, mandated reported requirements, and we'll continue to train them this spring, okay? Or this fall, excuse me.
Okay, so our special education communications that we've put out, we started July, early August communicating, really thinking about how we were going to reopen and all the different scenarios that came up. The board approval happened at Radnor Township School District for our health and safety reopening plan. That was July 28th. And of course, last night we had our August 18th board meeting. And again, the reopening plan was revised based off of the most recent information that we received from the Chester County Department of Health. So the case manager involvement, communication and training has occurred with our special education teachers regarding reopening plan. And you will see that as we go through our webinar, all the different things that they will be doing and have been a part of. We have had ongoing newsletters. You remember when we all started this with COVID, it was pretty much weekly, and then it went to once a month. We're hoping to keep it at once a month, but George and I have talked, and it's basically going to start coming out as things change. And I really hope it's not once a month, but if it changes more than that, we'll have newsletters that are more frequent. Hopefully it'll be less frequent, but we'll just go with whatever happens. Tonight is our special education webinar. We had our elementary student parents on in the first hour, and the second hour is for our secondary. We have question and answers. You see the chat room. We got to all of our questions at our last go around. We'd be more than happy to try to do that again this time. So if you have questions when we're doing our program here, please type them in. Anything that we don't get to, we will obviously answer, but all of these will also be included in our previously written out question and answer page that George has put up on our website. And finally, one of the last communications that has gone out is the communication for parents to select virtual programming over the hybrid programming this school year. It is a parent's option to do that. And again, it would be you and your case manager talking about that particular option and what the plan would look like should you do that.
All right, and just a quick follow-up, that Q&A will also be emailed to you. We'll talk about another piece that will be emailed to you in just a second, but all parents will receive a follow-up email, hopefully end of this week, if not early next week. And it'll include the updated Q&A for your reference, as well as another piece that we'll talk about. All right. There we go.
All right, so just like what happened when we closed in March, our initial and annual IEPs, GIEPs, and 504s will continue to take place. We will need them to continue to occur so that we maintain our timelines. Revision meetings will occur only as needed with our COVID individualized special education plans, which will be sent out to each parent to support our phase 2 and phase 3. So that would be our hybrid and our virtual phases. So those are some of the things that the case managers would be starting to work on. So evaluations have already been in progress. We've opened it up a little bit with our psychologists this summer, maintaining everything through our health and safety plan. And they have come in and started doing testing with students in the most appropriate way possible. We do have plexiglass screens. There's some shield wearing and obviously masks. They're doing a great job, and we will continue that as we work into the fall. So that is probably one of the biggest things that we need to do, because obviously, again, our timelines don't change, and we need to continue doing our biannuals and triannual reevaluations and evaluations. So the Zoom meeting protocol, again, nothing new here. This is what we're going to continue to do as we move forward. The scheduling will be with the case manager. They work with their scheduling secretaries. A meeting is confirmed. The team members will show up via Zoom. When possible, our documents, our IEPs and so forth will be emailed to you, the parent. We're going to try for at least 24 hours in advance, but please know that it becomes very difficult to maintain this sometimes. If it's a little bit later than that, we do apologize, but we realize that you need to have that document because it's very difficult for you, because we won't be able to hand it to you in person. The documents, the annuals, will be written as if the child were physically in the building. So a phase 1, everyone in and everything's fine. So we're going to continue doing that. There will be no reference of the interim plans within the IEP, but PDE and the Recruitment Services will be discussed within the COVID plan and the IEP, but we'll talk about that in a later slide. It gets a little complicating. After each of these meetings, the case manager, as always, will finalize all the documents and email the documents directly to you, meaning the annual IEP and the NORAP. We can US mail as long as we are in session, meaning my secretaries are in our office. As long as that's occurring, we can definitely US mail them. Please, if you don't get something through US mail, let us know. We will get it to you as soon as possible.
Okay. So 504 agreements during COVID. Case managers at the elementary level are special education teachers, and at the secondary level, which applies to this portion of the webinar, is coordinators. We have 2 coordinators, one at the middle school and one at the high school. 504s are still in place, but similar to the interim plans for special education students, they're written as if the child were in front of us. Case managers, of course, as they always do and will continue to do, collaborate with the staff working with your student, with your child, to make sure that they're able to access the curriculum based on those accommodations, based on that plan. It really is depending on what phase we're in. We do recognize that the instructional delivery is different in all three phases, but those case managers, again, will work directly with the staff to make sure that those accommodations are implemented appropriately and as written. There are no interim 504 plans. We just want to make sure that's clear. The 504 plan as it's written will be in place. If there are concerns related to what accommodations are currently in the plan or any revisions that you would like to see, that should be communicated directly to the case manager. All right. And again, that is for elementary special education teachers, and secondary, it is 504 coordinators. So the meat of the presentation is really reviewing the interim plan. So I'm going to just in a second post the plan. This is a template, and this template was already shared with the special education teachers, and they will begin to write these plans over the next few weeks. We'll go over in the plan as actually stated. You will get the plan by September 4th. The teachers are not due back until August 31st. So we'll go over another piece with parental input, but please know that they are working diligently. It will be to complete these and get them to you. Please be patient. There's a lot of other things that they're doing, especially that first week. The interim plan I'm going to post, and again, it is similar to the spring, but there are some differences as it allows us to move in and out of these phases and still implement special education services. So as a recap, as Jenny stated a couple times, the phase 1 back to normal kind of scenario is not in this interim plan. That is the IEP. The interim plan that you see here and you will get for each of your student covers phase 2 and 3. So different than the spring when we were mandated to be all virtual. According to the RTSD health and safety plan, we have the ability to move in and out of these phases. We need to make sure that our special education teachers are equipped to deliver those services in each of those phases, all right? So a little different, and this is just a summary of what I just said, a little different than the spring plan. It is broken up into both phases, phase 2 and phase 3, okay? There are a couple major differences that I will point out. The rest will look pretty similar as I stated. The biggest piece that we need from you or input from you is going to be on a parental input form, and I'm going to go over that next. We're asking you to complete that form and submit it to the case manager, assigned case manager, and they will then simply copy and paste it as a writable form or summarize into this document. Your input is crucial. Just like the IEP, we want to make sure that in this interim plan that we receive your input and use that input to write these plans. So please make sure that you submit those to the assigned case manager. Similar to the spring, the service section is the same. The service section would outline for each of the needs identified in the current IEP. So for instance, the child has reading and writing support. The teacher, the case manager would outline what those services look like. In a hybrid model, different than the spring, when we have some students in person or students in person, those services will look different. We have the ability to implement them more efficiently and probably more of them. If any of these sections do not apply to your child, they will be deleted. You will not see them. Different than the interim plans in the spring, we appreciate your flexibility as the staff worked so hard to get the virtual programming up and running. We did not formally track goals, and that you saw in those progress reports that came out. However, in this plan, and as we move forward, we do need to track goals. I want to state that it may not be all of the goals in the IEP, and some of the goals may look different. The biggest difference may be those goals that are observational. Even in a hybrid model, we don't have the students necessarily in front of us every day or full day. We need to make sure that we have goals that we can track, progress monitor, and of course are based on the needs of the student, each student. Again, any goal area that does not apply will simply be deleted. Specially designed instruction is similar that you saw in the spring, similar section you saw in the spring. However, case managers will be thoughtful about, again, accommodations that are appropriate for a hybrid model versus the all virtual phase 3. There may be more that we can do in that hybrid model. This section is new, the last new part, and that is placement. The placement will be marked the same as it is in the IEP. Your child gets learning support, autistic support, life skills, whatever it is. And that'll just simply be checked, one of those circles. The part that's different than the IEP, the placement section anyway, and this is to help our case managers really organize their schedules and sessions of services, is this last section. So a little different than the IEP where it lists time in the curriculum, so access to the general ed curriculum, and then access to peers, so those 2 boxes. We broke it up so it's easy for them to, one, track the services, and then 2, communicate what they're receiving to you. So the first one, letter A, is the general ed schedule. So for secondary, in the hybrid model, it's an A-B schedule. There is the ability for some special education students based on need to attend every day, and we'll go over that in a second, and that is based on individual decisions. But the case managers have statements to put in here based on that schedule, all right? The sessions, we believe, is probably the most important section. That's going to summarize what services your child is getting. So very similar to the IEP where it's listing, let's say 45 minutes of direct instruction in comprehension skills, something like that. 30 minutes of speech and language once a week. They will summarize that top section that we went over into this portion. The difference is going to be, we'll go over it in the next slide, is what's called recruitment services. So some students will qualify for recruitment services, and they may be adding those services to this section as well. Because it's going to possibly, students may miss something else in their day, we need to make sure that we track that, all right? So this is going to look a little different than the spring plan. There is a parent acknowledgement, but please know that it will not be a NOREP sent with these, but it will be a notice. You will receive a notice, parents will receive a notice, and of course, procedural safeguards are still in place, all right? Phase 3 is the same as the spring. It is not to say that these services are all the same. Our teachers, and again, we thank all of them, have gone through extensive training this summer and will continue to go through training. I know their first week is pretty packed with how to support students in that all virtual model. Our special education teachers, we truly believe they went above and beyond to get those services virtual, and they have continued and will continue to even fine tune them further, all right? So it'll look similar, but there will probably be differences. Again, the goal section, the only goals that most likely will not be listed in their observational goals, things that we need the students to be in front of us in order to track.
And again, George, I'm just going to, I did it last time too, but that is another really big piece that is really different this time is the goals. We've added goals into our virtual if we end up going, you know, when we're all virtual. So that piece is in there. Goals will be written and will be monitored based off of some new programs that we have, a new progress monitoring program that we have. Okay, go ahead, George.
Yes, thank you. The section that is last on this document, and just for everyone's knowledge, will not be completed right away. We're going to go over that in a second. But we have it on this document because it applies to some of those services that will be provided in any phase we're in. And that's called Recruitment Services. The teachers will need all the case managers to collect new baselines and compare it to the data from pre-COVID. If any recruitment services are needed based on that data, they will be listed in this last part of the document, all right? What we believe is probably the most important for parents to complete and to help us with is this parental input form. Case managers, as always gather parental input for the IEP, and they will do that for the interim plans as well. We are really going to rely on our parents, and we appreciate all of our parents completing this form and sending it back to our case managers timely. All right, you will get this in an email, as I stated, if not the end of this week, the beginning of next week, and we'll be sending that on behalf of the case managers. Okay, you'll complete that and then return it to the assigned case manager. If you're not yet sure who the case manager is, please know that they will be reaching out over the next couple weeks to inform you of who that is, and you'll submit that form to them. Okay, I will not go over this in depth. It's pretty straightforward. What I will say is this really relates to the virtual model. All right, so you've been working with your child at home. There are some strengths with that they're displaying with the virtual instruction, and then there's probably needs as that relates. There's other questions about attitude towards school, access to that virtual platform, how they're feeling about it, peer interaction. It's pretty extensive. So again, please complete that for us. We would appreciate it, and submit it to the case managers. If we do not receive it, similar to the IEPs, we'll simply state that it wasn't received, and we will still complete the plan for you. Professional development, I'll just again mention, and we want to thank them, any that are on here, and this will be posted. They've gone through extensive professional development. Please understand that we'll continue to do that as we remain virtual or move in and out of those phases. And some of those are specific to the programs that we implement. For instance, Read 180, System 44. In the spring, we were not equipped to deliver all those programs virtually. We are slowly training staff and providing training for them in order to implement all those components. All right. This was discussed at last night's board meeting, and it is on the Chester County Health Department's website. We want to put this in here and acknowledge it because it has been talked about not only last night, but as of Friday when we received it amongst the administrators and some of the staff. In that plan, although it recommends that all school districts begin virtual until October 9th, I believe, and that is what the board voted on last night, it does allow an exception in that guidance is for special education students to receive some in-person instruction. We are looking at bringing some special education students back in for in-person ahead of the October 9th date that the board approved last night. We will go over that on the next slide. We just please understand that we, based on last night's decision and the guidance we just received Friday, we're working around the clock to get our plan solidified, and we'll share that with you once we have a final decision. But again, some of that guidance refers to what we've been talking about at nauseam at board meetings and on our documents, the need for social distancing and hygiene practices, transportation, monitoring health, face covering, so the list goes on. All right. We did a pilot ESY program, and it was very successful. And we were basing a lot of the decisions and transition of our special education students into the building surrounding the program that we did this summer. All right. Jenny?
Okay. So we literally just basically feel like we didn't get any sleep. The board meeting ended at 1:30, and based off of the things that occurred at the board meeting, George and I started working on a phased opening, looking at what happened at ESY, how successful it was, and really starting to phase that in with a first group of students, kind of the more significantly needy students. Then you go to a group 2, and again, looking all team decision based ideas of exactly what students would be bringing in next, and then a group 3, which would be all of the students. We are thinking that all of this would occur before we would be all back with our hybrid as per October 9th. So in looking at all this, again, these are team decisions, and we want to do this in incremental steps moving forward. At this point, we really don't have the dates when we're thinking about doing this. In fact, I'm just going to let all the parents know there are teachers online here that did not know this. They have not seen it yet. It is something that George and I literally woke up this morning and started putting together. So we are going to be looking at doing that. It is my understanding at this particular point, things change. We may be one of the only very few school districts that are doing that after the word came out from the Chester County Board of Health, but we really are taking the student safety into consideration and also looking at student need and figuring out the safest way to incorporate this into our plans as we roll out into our new school year. So it is something we're really looking at.
All right, the last two slides, which we mentioned or you saw on that plan, one of them, PDE released guidance for districts, or mandated, we'll say, on districts to offer COVID compensatory services if it's deemed as a need. However, that is after the teams, the teachers, and their teams have time to implement what's called recoupment services. So this was a couple questions on the last group. I'm going to try to outline the difference, okay? Before COVID compensatory services, what PD is calling compensatory services, are implemented or decided on, if they're a need, the teams are able to implement recoupment. And that means that the teams are going to be collecting data, comparing it to where they left off prior to COVID, and determining if the students regressed and in what areas they regressed in. Those services, depending on each child, may be more of what they're receiving now. For instance, System 44, they may be getting more of that. They may get a different service depending on, or different type of service depending on how much regression has occurred. Related services, similarly, we'll be doing the same thing, looking at if regression occurred and offering potentially more services. This guidance was received not too long ago, and we are seeking clarification on when those timelines need to be followed. For instance, and you can read this on PDE, it does state when students return to in-person instruction. It does not clarify if a district chooses a hybrid model, for example, if that means that it's all students in person, all day. So we are seeking clarification, and we will deliver that information to you and, of course, our teams as we get it. Again, this section will not be completed in the interim plan. We need our teams to take time to collect those baselines over the first few weeks of school. And again, to look at that past data and determine if regression occurred, okay? And case managers will, of course, track each student's progress as it relates to not only their goals, but also if that regression occurred. And our hope is with that time allotted to us, that we'll be able to catch those students back up, okay? Now, the difference in recoupment services, which are implemented kind of initially and for the first 3 months, as it's stated in the guidance, after that period then, PDE, and there's, again, it's on the website if you'd like to read it, and also in our Q&A, PDE released guidance on what is then called COVID compensatory services. And this would be after the recoupment period. So in summary, the teams have a couple months to assist students in catching up, we'll call it, for any regression that occurred by offering maybe some additional services and supports according to each student's need. After that period, then the teams will meet for their students and determine if, one, they have recouped from that regression, recoup back up to the level they left us, and then if further services are needed. Please know that Jenny and I are again seeking guidance and really being thoughtful about what those compensatory services may look like. And we have some thoughts already, but we really need to see how the students come back, when they come back, how long they're back, and really where the students are, right, when they return to us. So we've been very transparent with staff and our parents. We will, of course, share that information as soon as we receive it and we are able to get the students back in person. All right. I'm going to stop the recording and we will answer some questions.